Good afternoon. Happy to have you join us online and also here in the room. So we'll talk about compassion pretty soon here. Let's start with a little bit of meditation to find our breath and get settled, and then we'll do some prayers, and then I'll set a motivation, and then we'll go from there.
I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings.
So our ultimate goal in Buddhism is to benefit all sentient beings by attaining Buddhahood. And the great practitioners say that in our motivation at the beginning and our dedication at the end, we need to be assertive, almost arrogant. This means our motivation and our dedication must be vast. And it may seem arrogant to say, I will make all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. I will make them free from suffering and its causes. For we are promising to do something that we are not in the position to do. However, generating these wishes helps a very vast motivation and dedication. If we do not have that motivation to do something, we will never even approach it. The vast motivation and dedication will encourage us to go in that direction and give us the courage and fearlessness to do that. Without a courageous attitude, we will have difficulty accomplishing even something easy that we are fully capable of doing. So let's reaffirm our bodhicitta motivation to attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. Keep that in our mind. I always hit that too quiet or too hard. Have you noticed? So gosh, there's so much. This was hard to do because there's so much about compassion, you know. books and books and books and libraries and more books. So I guess where I would start is, since the mind controls the body and speech, then it's really important to start understanding how our mind works, and then how our body feels, and then what comes out of our mouth. So this idea about watching what's going on and what the quality of it is the first step, really. And to not be so critical when we're looking at this. I don't know about you, but my mind is untamed, and so I just need to keep looking at it to see what it's doing, because then I'll learn what to apply so that I can start transforming it in a good way. And if we do this, then we're able to stand up against the afflictions, and our body and speech can begin to be controlled. And I think this is very necessary in this current climate in this country. Because practicing in this way, then we have the space to actively cultivate ethical conduct and actually stand up for compassion. I found a quote by Albert Einstein which was very helpful. This was an interesting man. He said, "A human being is part of the whole, called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. Humans experience themselves, their thoughts and feelings, as something separate from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of consciousness. The striving to free oneself from this delusion is the one issue of true religion. Not to nourish it, but to try to overcome it is the way to reach the attainable measure of peace of mind." So we can bring this truth of really dependent arising into our minds as we listen to some wise things written by wise masters about compassion. And just to remember, nothing exists separate from the rest. And then with this kind of viewpoint, then we can explore compassion in a realistic way. So the first thing is to define love and compassion. And so love has the aspect of friendliness, and its function is to promote friendliness. It makes malice and annoyance disappear. Its proximate cause is seeing others as endearing. When it succeeds, it eliminates malice. And when it fails, it degenerates into selfish, affectionate desire, which I call attachment. And then compassion has the aspect of allaying suffering. It functions to find others' suffering unbearable and manifests as non-cruelty and non-violence. Its proximate cause is seeing those overwhelmed by suffering as needing help. When it succeeds, it reduces cruelty. When it fails, it produces personal distress. And so cultivating compassion begins with being moved by suffering. First, we become aware of our own suffering, feeling that it is unbearable, we aspire to be free from it. And if you think about your earliest memories, maybe when you were running and fell down, it was very apparent that this was suffering and you wanted to be free from it. We all started with that. So we've been experiencing this since we can remember in this life and, of course, prior lives. After we start paying attention to the suffering we experience, we shift our focus to others and become aware of their suffering, realizing that their suffering is no different from our own. Suffering is suffering, no matter whose it is. We feel that it too is unbearable. Then we consider others' kindness to us and the fact that our lives depend on them. Feeling empathy and gratitude, we experience compassion and want them to be free from suffering. Now, when our compassion is being developed, it may easily slip into personal distress. And that's the close enemy of compassion. When we encounter people who are suffering, our response is compassion, wishing them to be free from whatever physical or mental pain they are experiencing, from a small annoyance to extreme agony. Compassion enables us to look at suffering in all forms without falling into despair and without being limited by our own personal distress. It enables us to respond in an effort to alleviate it. An active response is a hands-on approach. A toddler's running in the room and falls down, boom, and you go pick it up and soothe it. Him, her. It's not a it. Okay. Also, the taking and giving meditation is an indirect response, whereby our heart is open and engaged, although we are not able to actively do a specific task to help the person at that time. So many different ways to apply compassion, to open our hearts, be it direct or indirect. Now, some people hesitate to cultivate compassion, thinking that it will only bring them more suffering and that they already have more than enough. And when we have a sudden emotional overwhelm that can't bear another's misery, we feel overwhelmed by a sense of distress that we do not want. So when our compassion is still weak, it may easily slip into personal distress, again, which is the close enemy of compassion. It's an emotion that may seem to be compassion, but it's not. Genuine compassion focuses on the person who is suffering and wishes them to be free from suffering and its causes. Personal distress, on the other hand, focuses on our pain at witnessing another's suffering. With personal distress, we can't bear to see their suffering because we hurt when seeing it. So personal distress clouds our minds and leads us to feeling so much sadness that we actually become unable to help others very well. Now, where does this come from? It begins with seeing another person's suffering as so bad that nothing can be done to change it. So we're viewing something as solid, fixed, not able to turn it or move it or affect it at all. So it's a very illogical way of thinking about something. And of course, with our minds, we create the story and then it becomes our reality. So that's kind of what we're doing. So feeling their suffering as hopelessly unbearable, our attention then turns to our pain while witnessing their misery. And then when that happens, we lose the ability to discern, to discern what is our responsibility and what is theirs. We feel guilty seeing another person suffer, and we think we should be able to do something about it. Not knowing what to do to relieve their suffering because we're looking at it as something that is hopeless and solid, fixed, permanent. Then we become very distressed. We may become angry at the situation or the person, policy, institution, or event that contributed to others' suffering. At a complete loss for any practical remedy, we may stew in depression. Instead of our helping others, they now have to help us. Is this sounding kind of familiar to people? Yeah. And of course, when people are suffering, it's not the same for all of us, and we don't have the same reaction. So for some, it would be a family member. For others, it would be a little one, a little kid. For others, it would be an elderly person. So everybody has kind of a different connection and experience, I think, with personal distress that has been built based on everything that we've ever experienced, really. So very different ways of responding to it. Would everybody in this room say that they have experienced this personal distress in their life? Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's really helpful to recognize that as what it is, because if we don't notice it at the time, then we dig ourselves into quite a hole and we can't discern what's going on, and usually we just exit from it, and we don't feel good. So there are some things that we can do to counteract this unhelpful personal distress. First, we can remember that we cannot control everything that happens in the world. So that one, what is that one? That's getting the lens very wide instead of this narrow little thing. So very wide. Gets us kind of plugged back into reality. And it helps us to accept the reality of situations that we don't like. And although we aren't able to undo the complex network of conditions that brought about others' misery, we can think creatively about what we can do to lessen their suffering, make it more tolerable, or to reverse its course. Recalling that misery is impermanent by nature helps us to put suffering in a realistic perspective. We can always do the taking and giving meditation, which is very beneficial, because when we're doing that, we're remembering the meaning of actual compassion in that practice. We may have learned a number of other effective strategies that helps us to tolerate distress in our lives. The key is to remember to use them with compassion. This is the most important piece of this, I think. So a lot of time when people write about compassion, they talk about something that is heart-opening and connected to others. And so to get some feeling about what that actually means, we have to practice it so that we can connect to it. We all have the ability to do that, but I don't know how often people actually realize that's what they're doing. What do you think? Do you know when you actually have a heart open and you are approaching something with the feeling of compassion? Is that pretty easily identified for people? What do you think? Yeah? Some nods, yes. Some yes. Yeah? Okay. All right. So if we bring forward this open heart, I mean, sometimes it just arises, of course, but if it's something that's kind of something that we're not expecting, then that can be difficult to not fall into personal distress, yeah? The example that I'm thinking about is when one of our friends here, visitors, had a stroke here. And she was in the middle of the stroke, and we figured out that's what was going on, and we took her downstairs and called the ambulance. And there were some people that came by that were clearly in personal distress and asking her things that weren't helpful and, you know, etc. So to stay balanced with the heart open and compassion there is something that we have to practice. So for some of us, we've been in situations where we've had a lot of practice with that. For others, that we've never had that. But you know, the thing about the mind that's so beautiful is that if we just imagine helping somebody that is actively having a stroke, then if that ever happens, we will be able to step forward and actually help and not get pulled away and really confused by our own personal distress. And that comes with how we're thinking about it. If I have the thought, oh, I can't help that, I can't help you, I don't know what to do, then we won't know what to do. But think about it for a minute. If you were having a stroke, wouldn't it be very helpful to have someone standing next to you that had their heart open and had compassion? That would actually be a lot, and probably enough, especially if the person was not going to survive. Yeah? So we can always offer that. If we can offer more, good, but we can always offer that. Yeah? So we have to open ourselves to offer what we can in these kinds of situations, not discount that we can do anything. Everybody in this room is very compassionate. You can always tap into that and be helpful. Maybe someone else will come by that can do other things, that's fine, and the ambulance comes, good. But you can always do that. So without falling into personal distress, we can assess the situation accurately, see what needs to be done, what we are capable of doing, what the other person is capable of accepting, and when someone else may be better suited to offer help. So this thing about figuring out what somebody will accept, that takes a little bit of compassion and patience to kind of see where they are. And they may say no, and then that's fine. We don't get angry at that. We just, okay, is there something that I could offer? Or we just stand there and we're there as witness and to be there with our heart open. So sometimes all I can offer is my heart is open. And I'm feeling compassion inside of me. That translates to other living beings, you know? It takes a lot of courage and fortitude to be compassionate. It's not an easy practice, you know? Because we have to be able to bear seeing others suffering. We have to be able to maintain a strong wish that they not suffer, even in situations that we can do little to change. That's the hardest one. But again, when I can't do much to change the situation, I always can open my heart. I always can do Tonglen, for example. So it's necessary to have a strong and stable mind that can remember that our formal aim really is to benefit others. Yeah. And so if it's something that's out of my comfort zone, I have to work on how I can go forward, how I can be there for somebody and not shut down, not get angry, not ignore it, not push my way in. Those are kind of all the things that we can do. Because when this kind of thing happens that's not expected, there's a lot of adrenaline that comes into the body. And so we've got a lot of energy and we don't know what to do with it or where to place it. So the first thing is that we have to get in control internally first. So we do that by how we think and how we're breathing. So we tell ourselves to take a slow, deep breath. We relax ourselves. We tell ourselves whatever we can do is going to be enough, because there's many things that we cannot do. Yeah. Especially if it's that kind of a situation, all of a sudden somebody falls ill, you know. So it's beyond, you know, our ability to do much, but we can always be there, be witness, open our hearts, and the person is not going to experience this alone. That is the most helpful thing often, yeah. Our happiness and well-being are interrelated with those of others. We depend on one another to have the necessities and enjoyments of life. So if others suffer, we too will be affected. Since we depend on others so much, they deserve to be treated well. Repaying their kindness only makes sense. Extending ourselves to others with a warm heart, even in small ways, brings so much goodness in our world. And, you know, we do that a lot here, you know. We'll make prayers to places in the world that are having such suffering right now, for example. Those actions help. They help all of us. They help us and they help the people that are experiencing the suffering. Yeah? The other thing why this becomes so difficult is that we really have to accept that there are many uncomfortable truths in samsara. And we have to accept that the reality of the world is often very different from what we'd like it to be. And we have to be willing to let go of the delusions we maintain in order to stay comfortable. that mind that this shouldn't be happening. No, I can't do this. I can't stand it. I can't tolerate it. That kind of mind, not helpful. And so that's the courage place. So how do we develop that? So one way I do that here is, since we're in the country, when I'm walking on a trail and I see an animal dying or dead, I make myself look at it. I say some prayers. I normalize it in the fact of everything that comes together comes apart. This is the natural order of things. The more I can get used to that, the less freaked out I will be when this happens with others. Yeah? And so I make myself do that. I don't want to, especially animals. I can watch something happen with a person and I'm fine. It's so interesting. But an animal, that is the hardest thing for me. So I have to force myself to be with it, to do that. Yeah? That's just what it is for me, So everybody has their comfort and uncomfortableness with all these things. So we don't judge it. We just work with how it is for us. Yeah? If we're serious about developing our compassion. Many people's fear when they get very sick and they're getting close to death is that they are going to die alone. So we always can be there for people. Yeah. So how do you train yourself for that? So you use your imagination. The ones that I care for. Now I take one of those people and I imagine that they're in their bed, they're close to death, and that I am sitting by the bedside and I'm doing the prayers that are the prayers that they do every day, and I am with them, and my heart is open, and I'm not thinking about how hard this is for me. I'm thinking about what I can offer to them. Because this is the natural order of things. Where are we going to go where we're not going to be next to and around things dying? There is no place. So we can get familiar with it so that it isn't something that brings just total personal distress. Is this making sense? Don't like to hear it though, huh? Yeah. If we train ourselves to accept the reality of the world, it may be disturbing to us, but it also presents us with possibilities. These realities occur within a system of causes and conditions that can be changed. Like what's currently happening in this country. This isn't an impermanent phenomena that's happening. It is not the end of the world as we know it. It is confusion and very little skillful means, and people that think that what they're doing is going to bring a certain result that they think people will like, at least some people. It's just that. I know about that. I try to do those kinds of things. So remembering that everything that is happening is impermanent helps us to not fall into discouragement and personal distress. So rather, we can use the current situation to develop our compassion so that we stay in a balanced place as we confront these changes that are happening in our country. So what does that mean, stay in a balanced place? So for me, that means paying attention to where my mind wants to go or is going, and discerning if that's going to be helpful or not for me. So if I hear something and it scares me, then I need to work with my fear. Oftentimes when we hear things, it either isn't happening yet, or it may be happening, but there are people that are trying to get it turned around. So like the thing about ICE going and taking people that they shouldn't even be taking, that's happening. And boy, I don't like that. And it's kind of fearful in some ways because it's so different than what we've ever done here in this country. But then I think, I'm quite white. They're not going to come after me, probably. Not yet, anyhow. No, they're not going to come after me. So, this isn't about me. This is not about me. How can I bring the energy of compassion into this world that is going to affect every other living being? Could we believe that? Are there people that do not respond to compassion, do you think? What do you think? If there are very few of them, and they're more than likely locked up in a cage, I would say. Very few. So this catastrophizing, go ahead, Nicole.
Venerable, what do you mean by people who don't respond to compassion?
Well, that they're incapable of that attitude, that feeling state. There are people that believe that there are some people that are so I don't know what the word would be.
Listen, they don't experience compassion themselves.
Yeah,
they're not.
Yeah, kind of
they
like.
have no empathy.
Yeah, kind of like that.
That kind of
Yeah.
thing. Oh, okay.
Yeah. A lot of inmates get that label, and of course it's not true. But yeah, but people think of them that way and treat them that way, and boy, does that mess them up, Yeah. So that's just another example of how, if you bring compassion into a place where people don't experience it very often, it just flows out of them. That's what happens when we go to visit the inmates at Airway Heights, is it not? They are just open, I mean, sometimes they may get a little whatever, but mostly, if you are really just open-hearted, thinking about them, attending to where they are, wanting to help, they're just open, They drop all the junk, So we always can do that. We can always bring compassion, always. One of the inmates once told me this story where a new guy came into the prison, into his cell block, and he had a really bad reputation for being really cruel and, mean and, scary and watch out. And for some reason, this new guy kind of befriended the fellow that I was talking to. And so, things were going okay. And then one day, when this guy that was telling me this story was in the common room, this new guy that had the bad reputation came walking in. Excuse me. Came walking in and was looking straight at him and looked so angry. And this guy that was telling me this story, at first he was like, oh God, he's gonna get me. And he was just so scared. And he remembered that somebody told him, all you have to do is send love to people, and that will be very beneficial. So he just started imagining all of this white light coming from his heart going to this guy. And, the guy's coming across this long room, and the guy was just throwing him this light, just from his heart, and kind of saying, may you be happy, and, how can I help you, and stuff like that. The guy got to him and came right into his face, and I guess the story was that somebody told this guy that that this fellow was bad-mouthing him and, talking down about him, that he was a terrible person or something. And this fellow that was running this light toward him looked at him in his eyes and he said, if you think about it for a minute, you know that that story is not true. While he's still, the light. And that guy kind of looked at him, and the energy shifted, and he kind of squinted, and he said, well, you better not ever. And he just walked away, and that was the end of it. So very powerful, very powerful. Yeah. So we can always do that. So using the current situation to develop our compassion so that we stay in a balanced place. So the courage comes when I'm going to not run away, not shut down, not match it with anger, not cower. That's what is happening now in some of the government stuff. If you feel like there's a bully there, you try and do what they want you to do so that you'll feel safe. That is not working, but that's what some people are doing. And boy, I don't think they feel very good about themselves at all. So I want to try and have compassion for those folks too, They think it's their livelihood, if somebody came here and said, you better do A, B, and C, or I'm taking away your ordination. Well, I'd probably listen to that, even if it was a bunch of baloney, I might, anyhow, I don't know. But, so all we can do is work with our minds. But, that's so much, if we just remember that. And this balanced place is about whatever comes toward me, how am I going to rebalance my mind so that I use my, wisdom to see if the situation is safe or not, of course. If it is, then even if it's uncomfortable, could I open my heart? Could I bring compassion, this attitude of compassion forward, this friendliness, this openness? I'll tell you another story. This is interesting. This just popped in. So when I was in school, and one of the things that we were doing was nursing out in the community. And so 3 of us were supposed to go to a shelter downtown in, what city was that in? Seattle. And they were going to let us kind of see what happens there, and they were going to, let us kind of help the people that came. And it was a big shelter in a big old building. But the address we had, we couldn't find. Finally, we looked down an alley, and it looked like there were quite a lot of people running around in that alley. And so I thought, well, it's probably there. So here we are, 3 nurses in our little, nursey thing. So we're coming down the alley, and I'm thinking, I don't know, this looks a little dicey to me. One of the women that was with me, she immediately made a beeline to 2 guys that were sitting up against the building, and I was not going to talk to these guys. She kneeled down so she could look at them right in the eye, and she said, "Can you help us?" And they said, "Sure, what you need?" "Well, we don't know where this is." And they said, "Oh, it's where we live. Come on, let me show you." And so they stood up and took us where we needed to go. The courage that she had, I did not have that then, I'll tell you. So, and they were so happy to be able to help. So happy to be able to help. I learned a lot that day from that girl. Yeah. So we have to use our discernment and to see what we can do and to see what they can accept, whoever it is. And if it can't be a direct interaction, then it can be an indirect interaction, and we're still doing something. So all the time that we are doing Tonglen for the people in the government and the people that are running things and all that, that is something that we can do that is powerfully helpful. Mostly to ourselves, I think, but I think it also resonates and ripples through the waves, through the airways, to wherever they are. I believe that, Maybe it's bunk, but I believe it. And if you believe it, then it becomes such in many ways, And no problem to think that way, yeah? Because if I don't put my attention to those kinds of ways of working with my mind, what happens? Uh-oh. Worst case scenario, I am powerless, it's a mess, catastrophizing, it will not turn out well, blah, 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 anger, all those things come up, and that's what's in my mind. How is that helpful? Never. Really never, yeah? So who's going to protect my mind? Only me. You can't protect my mind. So who's going to protect your mind? Only you. And thank goodness the Buddha taught us how to do that, yeah? So His Holiness wrote, "Our lives are in constant flux, which generates many predicaments. However, when these are faced with a calm and clear mind, supported by spiritual practice, they can be successfully resolved. By contrast, when our minds are clouded by hatred, selfishness, jealousy, and anger, we not only lose control, we lose our sense of judgment. At those moments, anything can happen. Our own destructive emotions pollute our outlook, making healthy living impossible. We need to cleanse our own internal perspective through the practice of wise compassion." I like that sentence. We need to cleanse our own internal perspective through the practice of wise compassion. So whenever my internal sense of okayness is disturbed, I need to figure out what's going on. If I don't, then by the time I figure it out, I'm consumed by it often, you know? So we got to nip these things in the bud the moment. So if, there is some uncomfortableness in my mind, that's what to work with in that moment. He continues, when we are caught up in a destructive emotion, we have lost one of our greatest assets, our independence. Our independence. At least for the time when our mind is disturbed, our capacity for sound judgment is weakened. So unfavorable conditions can be removed through analysis by examining the facts and discerning the actual situation without any negative emotional side effects. We can judge and reason, understand consequences, and think in the long term. We can also develop infinite love. He goes on to say, however, when humans become angry, all this potential is lost. No enemy armed with mere weapons can undo these qualities, but anger can. It is the destroyer because our intelligence is so effective. Humans can achieve good and bad on a grand scale. When we look deeply into such things, the blueprint for our actions can be found within the mind. Self-defeating attitudes arise not of their own accord, but out of ignorance. That's why when you think about what's going on in our government, there's no way to think about these people other than with compassion. They are totally lost. And the karmic result of what they're doing is going to be huge. Huge. So, of course, success too is found within ourselves. From self-discipline, self-awareness, and clear realization of the defects of anger and the positive effects of kindness come happiness and peace. We also know that. If we allow love and compassion to be dominated by anger, we will sacrifice the very part of our human intelligence, our wisdom. That's the ability to decide between right and wrong. So along with selfishness, anger is one of the most scariest problems facing the world today. And the problems we face cannot be blamed upon one individual person or a single cause, for they are the result of many, many conditions. So what is required is an emphasis on what we all have in common. That's what breaks that kind of mind. Let me find the one enemy. There is no one enemy, ever. Hatred and fighting cannot bring happiness to anyone, even those who win. Violence always produces misery. And all we have to do is look at our long history of violence in this country to see that that's correct, or in the world, actually, to see that that's correct. So external peace is very hard without internal peace or inner peace. Because we can only solve our problems through peaceful means. So that is our power, really, that we continue to develop that. Then it doesn't matter what comes, all the things that we have no control over. But having control over our mind, we can go through anything. We can go through anything. So of course, it's beneficial to work on external solutions, whatever we can do. But as long as our minds are ruled by anger and hatred, it's not going to go so well. And of course, we all want happiness and we don't want suffering. And the antidote to anger is compassion. Anger destroys love and compassion. And anger is undermined by fortitude, which is best practiced with an enemy. So all of these times when we characterize somebody as the enemy, then we realize at some point that we're miserable, and then we start changing our idea of them and our view of who they are and our label. And then what does that do over time? Has anybody had an experience around all that? What happens when, even just in this community, when we label somebody enemy and we're miserable, and then we quit doing that and we start thinking about them in a different way, and our misery goes down, then what happens over time? Rashika?
When that happens, it starts making me reflect on other people that I've imposed labels on, and it makes me question, are those labels actually valid? It's like once, the fallacy has been proven, and it just really helps my relationships for space. And also, I used to have a real big issue with having apathy for strangers. But then I realized that all my friends were strangers,
At some point.
and vice versa. So it helps kind of break down that illusion of a fixed self.
Yeah. When I first moved here, every week I had a different enemy here. I was driving myself crazy. And the antidote that I applied was, there are no enemies here. I told myself that a bazillion times. It was a Nundro for sure. And of course it worked, Yeah.
I think it helps me to be accountable for my part in the piece too, because if I acknowledge I'm the one putting the label, or that person is not having a good time either, if I'm treating them as my enemy. And it came up because there's a particular boss in my life that I really just had such a fixed image of, and I remembered he often when I left that job, he gave me a stuffed toy of Lucy from Peanuts. And I was like, oh, that's who he thinks I am. Like this really irritating bossy. And I'm like, I probably was exactly like that to him. And I have to own that. I was not helping that relationship. It was not just him. So it was just good to remember that. And he was kind enough to indicate that in a kind of adorable way. Anyway.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to ask him now if that's what the deal was or not. You sure? Yeah, okay. How about others? Do others have experiences where they changed their relationship with somebody just through thinking? Yeah?
I've kind of had that, and how others react to me, and I try and, be funny or talk to them, but it wasn't until I really tried to process it in my mind, like, everybody in the community I've talked to at one time, have been friends, laughed with at one time, so I try and think of that, in that way more.
Yeah,
And that helps snap me out of it
yeah, yeah,
after a while.
yeah. It's kind of like what Venerable Thubten was saying, take
Yep.
responsibility for
Yep.
what, I'm thinking and doing, yeah.
Yep.
Without fortitude, we cannot develop true love and compassion because we would be distracted by irritation. So here are some antidotes to anger. Appreciation of the value of enemies. Consider that in order to build character, the practice of fortitude is essential. See that the best way to practice fortitude requires an enemy. Understand that this is the way enemies are very valuable for the opportunities they provide. Decide that instead of getting angry with those who block your wishes, you will inwardly respond with gratitude. By seeing things this way, we can change our attitude toward adversity. This is very difficult, but very rewarding. So it's like step by step, starting to dismantle my attitude and bring in one that is more realistic. And then here's a little bit about approach. So consider the so-called enemy this way. Because the person's mind is untamed, he or she engages in activities that are harmful to you. If anger, the wish to harm, were part of the basic nature of this person, it could not be altered in any way. But as we have seen, hatred does not reside in the nature of a person. Even if it were the nature of a person to hate, then, just as we cannot get angry at fire because it burns our hand, it is the nature of fire to burn, so we should not get angry at a person expressing his or her nature. This said, hatred is actually peripheral to a person's nature. When the cloud covers the sun, we don't get angry at the sun. So we should not get angry at the so-called enemy, but instead hold the person's afflictive emotion responsible. So again, we pay attention to the afflicted emotions, not the person. Their emotions are not, all them. We ourselves sometimes engage in bad behavior, don't we? Or is it just me? But we don't think of ourselves as completely bad. No? So let's look at others the same way, doing the best they can with the information they have, with all the moments that they have experienced until this particular moment, just like me. So therefore, the actual troublemaker is not the person, but the afflictive emotion. We can learn to separate a corner of the mind from strong emotions like hatred and observe the mind from this vantage point. This indicates that the mind and hatred are not one. Therefore, the person and hatred are not one. Now, to get this under our belt and practice it, we have to practice this a lot and for a long time. This isn't just like a week practice or a couple weeks or a month. This is for the rest of our lives now to practice this. And again, I keep coming back to whose responsibility is it to take care of my mind? It's me. I'm the only one that can do that. So do I want to make myself miserable? I do not. I practiced that enough. I got an A. I graduated. I'm done with that now. No more. No more. So the best way to practice is to adopt a patient, persistent attitude through difficult circumstances. So it's kind of that energy like, bring it on. Come on. Yeah. Let me work with this one now. His Holiness writes, it's just not easy to have an intense bond with each and every being, so we don't need to be discouraged if biased attitudes interrupt our practice. See how balanced he is? Yeah, so I'm not going to think that I have this licked and it's never going to happen again. Nuh-uh. I am going to be working with these things until I die in this life, and in next life, more than likely, working again. That's fine. Yeah, it's not a race. It's practice. But over time, this inner calm, even external confusion and complication, will have little effect on our minds. And haven't we all seen how we are able to hold things that were so difficult to begin with, and now pretty easy? And don't we see that in others here? Yeah? This path works. If you do it, it works. So how about now comments or questions or, yep.
When I make mistakes lately, and I'm trying to do this more and more, and I make mistakes all the time. I think we all do. But if I can tell myself that I'm doing the best I can, and not feel guilty and not beat myself up, and then if I can do that, and then someone calls me on this mistake, I don't have to take it so personally.
Yeah.
Because I haven't beat myself up in the first place.
Yeah.
A lot of times it feels like if feel bad, I think it's common to feel really bad if you make a mistake, and then if someone calls you on it, then it's like that much more, it's like piling on.
Yeah.
But if I can forgive myself in the first place,
Yeah.
I can cut the root out of all that junk.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Wise. Rashika?
I want to know if you have any suggestions for antidotes I could use. I do get mad at fire for burning. I got mad with a pair of jeans a week and a half ago. So you were saying people don't get mad. It's a joke. It's a horrible joke. But no, I get what you're saying. It is easier when you're coming from a more equanimous mind and not putting labels on others, you know.
Yeah, well, everybody has to figure out what's going to work with their particular mind. Everybody's mind is so different. So for me, when I start getting angry, I often just will say, okay, I just accept it first. Okay, you want to go down that path? So then you'll kind of have a miserable day. That's what you want to sign up for? And when I do it that way, it's like, no, I don't. Yeah. Yeah, sometimes I do, and then I have a miserable day, and then I learn something about that. But, it's kind of like this expectation that it's going to be like this all the time. That's not where I am. That's not where I am. So I'm not going to, look for that.
But there is one thing that I just thought about, and I don't know if everyone, experiences this, but it's improving. But I've noticed it seems like the world kind of invalidates internal work as far as an effective way to impact what we deem as external. So like people will see us meditating, working on ourselves, and not see it, at least me, as an effective means to affect what I see as exterior problems. You know what I'm saying? Like what's going on in the world. But what I am coming to realize more and more, your thoughts lead your actions. So it does have a very real impact on the exterior, despite what I feel. But I think we need to add value towards that internal work, because it does manifest on the outside, because everything starts with your thoughts. So
I think you're in a room here with people that do value what you just said, And what other people think, it's not my deal. Not my deal. Yeah, Kelly.
I had said yesterday that I was looking for a way to not shut down when I feel overwhelmed, and I think you gave me the antidote today, which is that I've always felt like if I'm talking to someone who's really angry or really sad or really whatever, if I can't say the right thing or if I can't do something, that I that's when I shut down. But the idea that if the only thing I can do is just be there with them with an open heart,
Yeah.
I can do that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thank you. It's my
You're
antidote.
welcome. Yeah. Yeah.
What you were saying about how compassion can be the greatest gift to give to somebody in any given moment. Yeah, I had an experience like that where I was overwhelmed with grief and I didn't know why, and I just started sobbing on my friend's shoulder, and I could just feel like their compassion in that moment, and it was just unlike anything I had experienced, and it was it was like the perfect thing.
Yeah.
I will never forget that.
Yeah. That's the power of it. Yeah. Venerable Kunga.
There's a question online. Someone says, will Venerable speak a little bit about the proper attitude when purifying, knowing that we will be practicing for many lifetimes and making mistakes over and over again?
Well, I think the proper attitude is that we all have Buddha nature. And I don't know how long I've been practicing Buddhism in prior lives, but I did seem to find it this life without any logical reason why I would. So that gives me some idea that I'm coming along, And this idea about it should happen quickly, or I should get to it, or all of that kind of thing, that is not helpful. This is something that takes a long time But what I do know is all of the years that I've been practicing, I am a totally different person. You would not recognize me if I manifested that other mess before all of this. You would not. You would not. You would not. So that's good enough for me, because before I started doing this, if I would have stayed just with that, that would not have been a good thing at all, yeah? So I somehow knew, I don't know how or why, I knew that there would be something. And somehow I found what works for me. I'm good. You know, I'm good. And I can choose to worry about what's going to happen when I die and where I go, or I can have confidence in this path, knowing that it has nothing to do about punishment. It has everything to do about karma. And I have worked my hiney off purifying negative actions since I got here. That will be enough. And I'm continuing to do it. And I choose to believe that way. I'm taking care of my mind. I'm taking care of my mind in the only way I know how, yeah? Nothing that I have tried here ever has disappointed me. I have disappointed myself with crazy thinking, but anything that I actually stepped in and practiced, no disappointment. But I don't have a timeline for things. Like, you know, Venerable, what does she say? Be content to create the causes. That's what I can do. If I'm content creating the causes, then I'm not getting in my own way all the time. Hurry, 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 hurry. That's not helpful. And maybe it's easier when you're older, you know, I don't have the energy to do that anymore, so maybe that's a good thing. Keith.
Thank you, Venerable. I really like the points you made about, you know, labeling the enemy, and you're speaking to that. That was very helpful. And it got me thinking about, you know, how we are conditioned in samsara, that there's enemies and winners and losers, and you fight, right?
Yep.
I mean, that's the basic model.
Yeah.
And akin to that, people will say compassion is a position of weakness. It's not a position, it's passive, it's a position of weakness.
Yeah.
I know that's not true. I'm just wondering if you could speak to that some.
Yeah, I think all I can speak about it is through my own experience, I guess. I grew up in an environment where you didn't open your heart much. It wasn't acknowledged, it wasn't safe, all these things. But once I got into nursing and started taking care of people, especially people that were dying, when you're close to death, your heart opens, if your mind is still there working. And so of course I felt that, and it was so beautiful, and it allowed me to open mine. And then I felt what that felt like. So it takes some courage to work with that, to fiddle with that. You know, I know how to be buttoned up and I'm fine and leave me alone and I can do it myself and let go of, you know, whatever. That's not living. I know how to do it. That's not living. So this thing about trying to be transparent and honest about what's going on is the work. It's hard. It's very scary, but I do it anyhow. I don't know.
One other thought about that. I think some people would think if I'm being compassionate, it might mean non-action. It's like we can be compassionate for somebody, for people with different views than ourselves. We can hold compassion and we can still hold firm. We can hold people accountable.
Yep.
We can take actions towards positive change that are in alignment with our ethics and
Yes.
values.
Yes.
I think some people think that if you're opposing or resisting somebody, you have to be angry and hateful.
Yeah.
It's like you can hold compassion and hold people accountable
Yeah.
and take actions at the same time.
Yep. But you have to prepare yourself, at least I do. I have to prepare myself when I'm going to do that, that I am very grounded in what my values are, and I know exactly what I believe in, and I will not waver from that. And once I get that clear, then I just speak it, and there's no charge to it. And they accept it or they don't, none of that is my deal. My side is, this is what I will hold to, because I know in my heart that that's what's right for me. Yeah. So, yeah. Nicole?
I think for some there can be a fear of compassion because there's a perception that it will make you vulnerable or expose you to risk in some way. Like, for example, your story about the people in the alley and asking them for directions. I know myself and a lot of people I know would also fear that circumstance because, you know, we don't know those people, they look weird, what if they attack us or something, right? Like there's kind of this irrational fear of other people that may prevent us from approaching them or, you know, even talking to them or making eye contact. Even just making eye contact can be compassionate. And I've experienced a lot of fear myself that, you know, at times I've tried to resist, but also from other people. It's taught to us, you know, like, oh, don't pick up hitchhikers because they'll chop you up into pieces and stuff like that.
Ew.
Well, that is the fear. You know,
I know.
that, if people have even heard that, you know, I picked up a hitchhiker, they're like, oh no, don't ever do that again. And, you know, out of care for me, they're discouraging me from, you know, engaging that kind of act.
Yeah, and all of us have different capacity to work with our fear, I guess I would say. The story about going down the alley and then this person I was with engaged with these people, the way that I think about that is she was bodhisattva. And it taught me something very powerfully important and helpful. Because my usual characterization of someone like that was, you know, impaired, you know, can't trust them, they're going to hurt you, all those things. And what I saw was this beautiful exchange between these two people. And it cut all that crap just out of my mind, you know? So that's the value and benefit of taking a risk, I think. Yeah. It's hard. Yeah. But I'm sure.
I found it helpful that you mentioned too whether people are ready to receive compassion. That's something I really have to think about because you were talking about. I don't believe people there are people who can't respond to compassion. But what I did see when I was teaching was there was not enough trust.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially with the boys from gangs who were really, they come from a background where like no adult is trustworthy.
Yeah.
By the time the school is here, like we're trying to actually keep you in school and help you. They're like,
Yeah.
and then
away.
it's just this horrible cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was like constant testing. Like, are you going to be there for me? Are you going to be there for me? And you had to like show up every day and be fair.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was like exhausting.
Yeah,
But I realized, that's all of us knew as teachers. Like,
Yeah.
we have to be like a trustworthy adult
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
for these children who often didn't have one in their lives.
Yeah.
I'm sure Keith knows this too well.
Yeah. Because if you violate that, then they're lost often. Yeah. So it's, And when you keep at it and you see them change and transform in front of you, that is so worth everything you put in. It's beautiful. Yeah. And Machini.
I wanted to go back to what you had said about being very, very clear to prepare your mind for what your values are and where you stand. And then something Keith said, I don't remember now what it was, but it triggered my memory of when, after 9/11, when the United States went to bomb Iraq, I went for a peace protest in Coeur d'Alene. Very clear why I was there. And once I was there, the anger of the participants reached a point where I thought, I can't stay here. I want to be accounted for. I want to be seen. But if I stay here, I'm going to get caught up in this. I have to go. And so, as we look at resistance in the current situation, knowing where we're at any given time and like holding so strongly to where we're coming from, I think will be a good teaching.
Yes.
But something to be super
Mindful about.
of.
Yeah. That we really stay connected to what our gut is telling us. I mean, that's how I think of it. If my gut's telling me something, I listen. How many times have we not listened, and what a mess that becomes? I listen, even when I don't want to, or I want it to be something different, Yeah. Clyde?
I'm trying to make sense of that comment about trusting your gut after the story about the alleyway.
So I trusted the people I was with. I knew them well enough that for me it was like, but I saw her doing this and I thought, well, I know her somewhat. I'm gonna trust her. So that's what got me through that, I guess I would say. Yeah. So it comes from many different places. Yeah. It's not just a one thing, Again, here we come to that again, So many causes and conditions, Nice day, sun, all these different things, yeah. Nicole, this will be the last question.
Something just struck me about that story, that, your friend reaching out for help was being compassionate. Right? There wasn't somebody in distress. They were just sitting there. But she was compassionate to ask them for help and gave them an opportunity to create virtue by being of assistance to other people. And, I think that is a very bodhisattva-like action.
Yes, everybody gained from that experience. Yeah. I don't think it gets better than that, It's pretty good. Yeah. Yes, please.
That this really flies in the face that we have to do something spectacular to elicit change in the world. Is that these little moments of alley connections and taking care of the wounded squirrel and whatever. These are the drops of water in the vast ocean bodhicitta. This is how it works. Nothing spectacular. Just simple, straightforward, and totally connected.
Yep. I agree. Yeah. Okay. So let's just sit for a second and see what we're going to take away and work with our minds with.
Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.